The Flying Dutchman. The legendary ghost ship has captured imaginations for hundreds of years. A black ship with blood-red sails soaring through the sky. A harbinger of vicious storms condemning sailors to a watery grave in Davy Jones' locker. An impossible story. Could any of it be true? As the tale goes, the Flying Dutchman was captained by Hendrik van der Decken of the Dutch East India Company. Van der Decken was tasked with trading exotic goods between the Netherlands and the East Indies. On one fateful voyage in 1641, van der Decken was making the return journey to Amsterdam. As he rounded South Africa's Cape of Good Hope, he encountered a sudden, violent storm. Despite all reason and pleas from his crew, van der Decken chose to sail through the storm, declaring that he would complete the journey even if it took him until doomsday. As he uttered these words, the devil himself appeared before van der Decken, condemning him, the Flying Dutchman, and the crew to sail the seas for all eternity. Sighting the ghost ship, sometimes flying through the air, sometimes beneath the surface of the water, is a sign of impending doom. A storm or other misfortune was soon to follow. On the surface, the legend of the Flying Dutchman sounds like a story made up to warn against arrogance and recklessness in the face of the forces of nature. And in addition, there is no evidence that Hendrik van der Decken was a real captain that ever existed. However, there have been numerous reported sightings of the Dutchman throughout history. If the ship is just a myth, how can it be spotted all over the world, sometimes by many people at once? Perhaps the most famous sighting of the ghost ship was in 1881 by Prince George of Wales, who would go on to become King George V of the United Kingdom. The prince was on a 3-year voyage around the world. On July 11, 1881, he found himself in the Bass Strait off the coast of Australia. In his log, he wrote, "At 4 a.m., the Flying Dutchman crossed our bows. A strange red light as of a phantom ship all aglow, in the midst of which light the masts, spars, and sails of a brig 200 yards distant stood out in strong relief as she came up on the port bow, where also the officer of the watch from the bridge clearly saw her, as did the quarterdeck midshipman, who was sent forward at once to the forecastle. But on arriving, there was no vestige nor any sign whatever of any material ship was to be seen either near or right away to the horizon, the night being clear and the sea calm. 13 persons altogether saw her." In an unnerving postscript, he would later add, "At 10:45 a.m., the ordinary seaman who had this morning reported the Flying Dutchman fell from the cross trees and was smashed to atoms." While Captain Hendrik van der Decken probably never existed, the Dutch East India Company was certainly real, and ships did have to navigate the Cape of Good Hope. Now, the Cape of Good Hope is a notoriously dangerous place to sail. It has such a reputation for rough seas and unpredictable weather that it was originally known as the Cape of Storms. When Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias discovered the cape in 1488, he named it Cabo das Tormentas, the Cape of Storms, because of the large ocean swells and strong winds in the area. King John Paul II of Portugal would soon after rename it to Cabo da Boa Esperança, the Cape of Good Hope, because the fact that you could round the Cape and the continent of Africa as a whole meant that there was a sea route connecting Europe and India. So, while there probably wasn't a real Flying Dutchman ship captained by a Hendrik van der Decken, ships from the Dutch East India Company did pass the Cape of Good Hope on their way from Europe and India, and some were lost to the area's rough seas and fickle weather that could have inspired the tale of the Flying Dutchman. But what could possibly explain how a ghost ship can be seen beneath the surface of the water or flying through the sky? Perhaps the most compelling explanation is a particular type of mirage. This is a real, unedited photograph. Mirages are formed by atmospheric refraction. Refraction refers to how a path of light is deflected as it passes through one optical medium, such as air, to the next. The difference in refractive index between the two mediums determines how much the path of light is bent as it passes through. In air, the refractive index is not constant. It changes with temperature. What this means is that when you look through air of one temperature into air of a different temperature, the light might be refracted, creating a mirage. Mirages are classified as inferior or superior. This classification doesn't have anything to do with how impressive or complex the mirage is. It simply refers to whether the mirage images appear above or below the real object. In an inferior mirage, the mirage image appears below the real object. This is the most commonly observed type of mirage, and you've probably seen one on a hot summer day. In this example from the University Space Research Association, we can see a palm tree and its mirage that appears below it. Also reflected in the mirage are the bushes, utility poles, and the blue mountains in the background. An inferior mirage such as this one can appear because there is a layer of hot air at the ground. This air is much hotter than the air at eye level, so as we look through the cool air into the hot air at a glancing angle, the light can refract, allowing us to see the palm tree when we look below where it ought to be. In a superior mirage, the conditions are such that the light is refracted in the opposite direction, resulting in an image that appears above the real object. In a superior mirage, the light is being refracted parallel to the curvature of the Earth, which can result in all sorts of strange images, including allowing the viewer to see objects beyond the horizon. Superior mirage images might appear right side up or upside down depending on the viewer's distance from the real object. Some rays of light might even be refracted multiple times, constantly bending up and down. This results in distorted, ever-changing images stacked upon one another. This type of complex superior mirage is known as a Fata Morgana, and it can create this kind of eerie, unnatural image that someone might attribute to the supernatural. So now we have an idea of how a sailor might see a ghostly apparition of a ship on the horizon. But there's another layer to this that I think is truly fascinating. Recall the myth of the Flying Dutchman. Seeing the ghost ship was a bad omen. It could mean that a dangerous storm was soon to follow. When a storm is forming, it pulls warm, moist air up into the atmosphere to fuel itself. This leaves a vacuum in its wake, drawing cooler, dry air towards the ground. If the temperature gradient between these regions is great enough and at the right altitude, it can create the conditions for a mirage. This means that in the calm before the storm, a sailor might actually see the Flying Dutchman. Thank you for watching my video. I would like to continue making short documentaries of aviation and marine accidents. If you enjoyed this one and would like to see more, please subscribe so you'll be notified when I upload in the future. If you have any suggestions or feedback, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you.